Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining our panel about IE versus Bocconi. My name is Yuka, and I'm very excited to be moderating this panel today. For those of you who are tuning into Millie for the first time, Millie is a company dedicated to building a global community for international students, which is why we host these panels and webinars every weekend. If you're interested in our future events, you can follow us on Instagram at Millie_group for updates. So here's how today's panel is going to look. We have some questions pre-prepared already, but you can also submit your own questions for the Q&A in the chat bar. The first 45 minutes or so, we'll go through the prepared questions, and then after that, we'll let our panelists answer your questions. I encourage you all to ask any questions, whether they are general questions for everyone, or you could also direct it to a specific panelist, either is fine, and I'm sure they'd be more than willing to get the right answer. So today we have three amazing panelists, and we will hear from them about their experiences. So as an introduction, could each of our panelists please tell us your name, the university you attended, and the major you studied, the city you are currently in and are from, and then one fun fact about yourself. We can start with Marco.
Hi, everyone. My name is Marco Pere. I go to Bocconi University. I study economics and finance there. I am a third year, so I'm in my final year. I'm originally from Yangon in Burma, and afterwards I'm planning on doing a master's.
Hi, my name is Lucia Burmeister. I am originally from Argentina. I'm currently studying in IE University. I'm in my second year, and I'm studying a dual degree in business and data analytics. And one fact about myself is that I've lived in like 6 countries up until now.
Hi everyone, my name is Far Selmovc. I come from Sarajevo, which is in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Currently, I'm studying at IE University in the Bachelor of Data and Business Analytics.
All right, thank you so much, everyone. So we got to know a little bit about our panelists just now. My first question is, what motivated you to choose IE or Bocconi over other universities? Yeah, we can start with Marco.
Great, thank you, Yuka. I chose Bocconi primarily because after high school, I knew I wanted to pursue a career in finance. I did an internship at a middle market private equity firm, and looking at the sort of placement of people into financial careers, Bocconi was essentially, on top of the stack. I think the only real competitors that we have in terms of placement into financial jobs are Oxbridge, maybe Imperial, UCL, and HEC in Paris, and the LSE. And it was superlative in that, so that's why I joined. And in addition to that, they also seem to have a very career-oriented curriculum. For example, it is highly encouraged to do a curricular internship. So in lieu of a semester, you can do an internship for like 4, 5, 6 months, and you get credits for that. In addition to that, a lot of the courses, particularly computer science, where you learn Excel, and corporate finance, corporate valuation, they're all extremely relevant to people that want to pursue a career in finance, but not necessarily corporate finance. There is also people in my class and the master's programs that end up at trading firms, quantitative finance firms, and yeah, so it's good for finance, I would say. But we also have quite a few people that pursue academia. So they pursue a PhD or they pursue a more academic research-oriented master's. So I would say that, it was, knowing that I wanted to go into finance, looking for a program that was particularly career-oriented. And I'm half Italian, so I also wanted to polish up on my Italian. That was an extra motive, yeah.
So I decided to study at IE, first of all, because in terms of the degree I wanted to pursue, I wanted somewhat of a mix of a technological side and a business side. And I saw that two universities, ESAL and IE, they offered somewhat this mix. And I think it's a degree which is honestly very important nowadays, and it's very sought out for in terms of employability. So the fact that I offered it, I found it very interesting and I really liked it. As well, I said I've lived abroad a lot and I wanted to settle down somewhere that spoke Spanish because I'm Argentinian. And Spain is an amazing city. It's an amazing country. There's a lot to do. So in terms of quality of life, it's great. And I being there just made it really nice. And I itself, as a university, it gives you a lot of opportunities, as Marco said. Similarly to Bocconi, you can do a semester abroad, you can do exchanges, you have a lot of opportunities to outside of what your degree actually is to pursue any interests you have. You have like labs and you get to work with real companies and like for example, in my marketing project, we're somewhat doing like an internship with Five Guys right now. So it's a very interactive experience. And in terms of employability, it came out the other day that it's ranked 18th in the world. So it's really good. And yeah, that's primarily why I chose it.
So the reason why I chose IE is because it was one of the rare schools that offered a degree I was really interested in, which is the Bachelor in Data and Business Analytics. And apart from that, hearing about IE from other fellow older students, let's say that I knew, that went on to do a master at IE after Bocconi, were really happy with their experience and to what extent IE has opportunities for networking and to work with companies. Even though I'm only in my first year and my second semester, I would say that so far I'm really happy with the way everything is working out, the way they teach things. It's more of a practical approach rather than entirely being theoretical and focused on studying. You really do learn a lot, and you're just not focused on only studying the terms and knowing everything by heart. You actually get to apply many of those things right in class before you do so actually in real life. And it really, I think, prepares you well for not only your professional life, but also your personal life, and making everything very organized in terms of academia.
All right, that was great. So before moving on to the details, I wanted to know a little bit more about your overall experience at your respective schools. So could you guys maybe share like a brief, like some of the highlights that you have experienced at your school?
Yeah, I'm happy to. So I think, the really nice thing about being at certain courses in Bocconi is that because they're quite selective with their admissions lately, you're surrounded by people that are extremely ambitious. And, I think it's one of the it's a rare place where you get this feeling that every person that you're sitting next to in the classroom is going to be, somewhat relevant or very relevant in the field that they're choosing to go to. It's filled with, valedictorians, salutatorians, and people are just generally very well qualified, very ambitious, and even in their first year, second year, they're always trying to get their internships. Everybody's always working extremely hard, and I would say that's the highlight in almost every class that I go to. And yeah, there's sort of that camaraderie, but I would say that that's a highlight. But I would caveat that by saying that the courses are most of the courses are very rigorous, and they're not always entirely relevant to economics and finance. For example, we have 3 modules of mathematics that are extremely theoretical. They're more like proofs-based, and it's essentially what you would be learning as a mathematics major in the UK or continental Europe or the US. An economics student or a finance student usually would not have to learn that unless they're doing a very theoretical master's or PhD. So I would say that's one bad thing, because they make you learn things that are not the most relevant. They make you memorize. It's like a lot of the classes are very hands-on, but I would say the majority of them are not. It's multiple choice questions and open-ended questions where you really have to know the material in a black and white sense without any degree of nuance. So I would say it's very traditional in that regard, but the student body makes up for it, I think. Yeah.
At IE, similarly to Marco, everyone is very ambitious, but I think more important than that, all the professors that we have are very experienced in their fields, and outside of being just a professor, often they have their own companies, they work at amazing companies, and they bring a lot of experience with their teaching. So a lot of the times courses that might seem very theoretical, they're able to put it into a practical context, which makes more sense. Like, for example, my programming teacher, he did part of Google Maps and he sold it to Google. So you have teachers who are highly qualified and they have done a lot of things. And it opens doors to you in terms of teachers offering internships, teachers promoting you to different companies. So there's a lot of networking that occurs. And the type of people that go to IE have a lot of connections, and it really opens a lot of doors to you. So you have people, I'm in my second year and I've done an internship throughout my last semester. People do internships in their first years. So everyone is really, as Marco said, they're thriving to do a lot of great things, which is very nice. So yeah, that would be a highlight.
One of the things that I noticed in the first semester while I've been here is that people and professors are very open, and they are very encouraging, especially for people like me who may be a bit shyer in front of larger groups of people. They really do motivate you to present and basically make your ideas known and think of them as valuable when you present them to a future employer, for example. I also really like that something that Lucia said is that it's a very practical approach to learning at IE, and it's quite a lot less theoretical than Bocconi, I would say, as Marco described it. And honestly, that depends on you, on what's your cup of tea. I personally think that a practical approach is much better in university than the theoretical approach. However, I would also say that IE is also not at a significantly lower level when it comes to theoretical things, because we also learn quite a lot in terms of theoretical things as well. But I would say in a completely different way. And despite being theoretical in a way, you always will find some sort of application somewhere in there that's hidden, essentially.
All right, so that was great hearing your overall experience and key highlights. So my next set of questions is on the applying aspect of your universities. So could you tell us more about what the application looks like, the application process looks like for IE or Bocconi? And what are the key components? Like, are standardized test scores, essays, and interviews important? And if they are, could you maybe tell us like how would you rank them in terms of importance?
Right, great. Yeah. So Bocconi has several rounds to which you can apply to. So if you don't get in the first round, you can apply in the subsequent rounds. I would encourage applying early, because there are more spots open that way, and you can be considered for merit scholarships. And for example, there's depending on the percentile of the standardized test score which you receive, you can get merit scholarships. Like for example, a general rule of thumb that I've taken is that if you have an SAT north of around 1500 and a decent IB or A-level score, you have a pretty good chance of getting a merit scholarship. But this is only applicable to international students and not Italians. Additionally, at the SAT or the ACT or any standardized test score that you take, I would say that it is a major factor in getting into Bocconi, and that like the cover letter that you have to write and your extracurriculars, they're not as consequential as they would be in the British universities or the American universities. So mostly it's the standardized test score or the Bocconi test. So I would highly encourage trying to do well on that. But it also highly depends which sort of course you're trying to get into, right? If you're trying to get into like the bachelor's in like mathematics and artificial intelligence, or the bachelor's in economics and finance, you would need a pretty high standardized test score, especially with regards to demonstrating your quantitative proficiency. But if you're trying to get into economics and management, or economics and culture, right? It's standardized test scores, I would say, are not as important, and grades are not as important. But yeah, try to max out your standardized test score. Try to get high grades in school. I mean, the most platitudinous and generic advice I could give, but yeah, that's how Bocconi views it, right? That could make up for a subpar or mediocre cover letter. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Apply early and get high test scores.
Okay, so for IE, it's somewhat of a first come, first serve process. So as I applied in August and of 2022, and I started in September of 2023. So you can still apply for like that whole trajectory of the year, but especially if you're thinking of going into business, like just a bachelor in business, which is the one that is most sought out for. Often you run out of slots by February. So I would definitely recommend applying early because it does make a difference. I know that now IE has become quite rigorous. When I applied, it was not that rigorous because they had just opened the tower, so there were a lot more slots. But now, to my understanding, the acceptance rate is around 20%. So it's becoming quite selective. But when I applied, you have to answer like short answer questions by yourself, your extracurriculars, send somewhat of a form of a CV. Um, and you have to do some sort of like standardized test or like the SAT or the ACT, and I didn't do that when I applied. Because if you don't do that, you can take the I test, which is somewhat of an IQ test, and then you have like some like business questions that you have to think about. It's not very quantitative, like you have to know X amount of content or specific mathematics. It's more about knowing how you think and being able to on the spot think critically. So they kind of take that approach when you do not submit a standardized test. Um, I know they do take grades into account, especially if you want to apply for a scholarship. They have scholarships that range up to 75% of full tuition on the year, but it is very difficult to get one. For example, my IB score was a 41 and I did not get a scholarship. So it really depends. I don't really know their criterion, but I know there's a bunch of different scholarship opportunities. For example, if you have entrepreneured in your high school years. So there's a lot of things that you can apply for. I do think that they take into account a lot of your experience and your extracurriculars, maybe a little bit more than your grades. I guess, of course, it probably depends what type of degree you're pursuing, probably a more technical one. It definitely does require higher grades. I know that they have different standards. When I applied, I was told that I would need above a 6 in mathematics, so a 6 out of 7 in the IB. So it really does depend. I think that each degree has their own requirements, but I definitely would make sure that you have extracurriculars, that you show that you have experience, that you can think critically, that you're ambitious, and that you really want to take opportunity of everything that IE has to offer. And especially if you pass through the whole phase of the exams and they give you the interview, generally it's to get to know you more as a person and kind of know what you want to do with your life. And so it's really good to have a good CV build up and a lot of experience because I know they take that into account a lot. So yeah, those are my recommendations. And of course, make sure that you do good in school.
So I had a bit of a different experience when it comes to applying to IE, namely because I went to the IB as well. And during my session, there was let's say, a scandal/issue with the exams that were leaked, and it affected 5 out of my 6 subjects. And subsequently, my grades fell quite a lot because other people cheated and it was uncontrollable. So in the end, I had an IB score of 30. And even with that score, I managed to secure a partial scholarship and also get admitted. And even though I applied quite late, so I think in March of last year, I was immediately accepted. So with my a little bit above average SAT score and with my predicted grades of about 35, I think, and I did the interview and it went perfectly well. And I would also say that when it comes to IE, I would take a great deal of attention to the personal essay/video that they ask you to make, the CV as well, as I think that really saved me when it comes to my grade situation that unfortunately happened. And basically, I think that it's quite different from Bocconi in that sense that it really takes a lot more in a way of getting to know you as a person rather than just your statistics on paper. I'm a prime example of that. I did not have the best grades in the end, and yet I still have a scholarship, and yet I'm still admitted. And so far, my grades are pretty good. So that's essentially what I would say about IE. And basically, I don't. It really depends on the program as well. BDBA was kind of half empty. I'm not sure. In my course, there are about 30 people. Other courses are a lot more selective and a lot more popular. For example, BBA is very selective and very popular, and also other courses which I'm honestly not sure about. But I know BBA has several groups and is very selective. But when it comes to other degrees, it's basically how lucky you are and how many people are also interested in that degree is what will make you get admitted or not admitted.
All right. So, on top of all of that, with the knowledge that you have now, what do you think are some mistakes that people that are interested in applying should avoid? And do you have any advice on the people that want to apply through like the IE or Bocconi test? And also, maybe can you give us some advice on the interviews and essays?
So I honestly can't give out much advice on the Bocconi test because I didn't take the Bocconi test. I took a standardized test score. But I would say, unless you're really set on Bocconi, to take an ACT or an SAT, try to score high on it just because you also want to have a diversity of options. Similar to IE, when I applied, Bocconi was not necessarily the most rigorous or the hardest school to get into, especially compared to, like British universities with like extremely low offer rates, American universities with their abysmally low acceptance rates. But they're getting a lot more competitive. So this is definitely not a hedge, not a safety, especially if you want to get into the more selective programs. So yeah, I would recommend taking a standardized test score, preparing very rigorously for that. And there's no interview for bachelor's programs. So you either get in or you don't. But yeah, as with all other sort of applications, I would try to make it competitive by showing your quantitative aptitude, because unless you're taking the bachelor's in law, like the legal one, if you're going to do anything pertaining to economics, you're going to have to do a lot of maths, and I'm talking like pure maths. So definitely try to demonstrate your quantitative aptitude either through work experience, research experience, or simply through your grades, and also try to demonstrate that uh, you want to go into a career that Bocconi is well known for placing into, simply because if you're trying to get into, say, economics and finance, economics and management, uh, they place a lot of emphasis on their career resources that they provide you with. I would say that academically, it is a very traditional university in the sense that there's a very top-down approach with the teachers. A lot, I mean, it depends. If you get an Italian teacher, usually it's a bit more top-down. They're very qualified. The courses are very rigorous, but again, it's very traditional. Like the tests are very traditional, but they also want to emphasize that they provide a lot of career resources to help you get into a career that you want to get into, right? Like for example, in the beginning of each year, we have something called investment banking days, where we have basically like almost every large investment banking firm, Goldman, UBS, come in and give a presentation, take CVs, offer jobs essentially. And there's certain like careers that Bocconi is specialized for, and I think you should demonstrate that, right? Because we are not like IE, we are a business school. We're not an Oxford, we're not a Cambridge, we're not a Stanford. We don't have like extremely STEMmy majors, right? So if you try to emphasize through your application that you want to go into a industry that Bocconi is good at placing into, I think that will definitely help you.
Okay, so for IE, as I mentioned before, I did not take a standardized test by the time I had applied. I did it after. Um, But I would say that the tests are, I don't know if you guys have ever done an IQ test, but there's two. There's one that is an IQ test and the other one that I mentioned, which is about critical thinking. It's about problem solving. It would give you like business questions and like short ones that you would have to solve. I don't remember off the top of my head now at this point how the questions were, but they were along the lines and they made you think. It was nothing about memorizing. It was, as they tell you in the process, you can't study for the test. You have to think, you have to show that you can think and that on the spot you're able to rationalize and when you're given information, do something useful with that information. So I can't really say like Marco said about preparing like a quantitative demonstrating that you're really good at mathematics, for example. But definitely I would say, as I said before, put an emphasis on your CV, on your extracurriculars, on showing that you want IE not only just to study there to live in Madrid, but you want to take opportunities of everything that it gives you. In the interview, they will definitely ask you why you chose IE and what things about IE you really enjoy. So I would recommend going through into the website and really seeing everything that IE has to offer. They offer many exchange programs. They offer, as I mentioned before, these things called labs. You have, for example, the finance lab, and then you'll work with a large company. They'll give you a problem. You solve it, or at least attempt to solve it. And often they'll give you internship certificates, or they might take you into account and call you for a summer internship. So and often they'll bring a lot of panelists. So I think last semester we had the president of Ecuador come and talk to us. We had the president of Atlético de Madrid. So you have a lot of people with experience coming, and it's really important to show in your interview that you're interested in partaking in the things that they have to offer, in really engaging into IE and not only going there for the sake of going to classes, because IE definitely does have good courses, it has good professors, but outside of that, it's much more they're trying to push you to have to be very employable. So definitely make it very clear what you like about IE outside of just the courses. And I think that's the most important thing. Also, it's very important to ask questions. They really like when you ask questions and engage with them. So maybe beforehand, write a few questions that you can ask in the interview, because that is the final thing that will seal your acceptance or not. Those are my main things.
Apart from everything that Lucia said, I would also like to provide some emphasis on some other key things that might be asked in the interview. For example, I was asked very technical questions about my degree specifically, and I don't remember specifically what it was, but it was something along like you're presented with such a situation in the workplace, and the clients want this and that. How will you do that as a data analyst, etc., etc., and what would you need to do? So I would also encourage you to look up about your field / bachelor you want to study before the interview happens, because you will definitely be asked some sort of career related question, and you better be prepared for it. And I was. And it essentially, I think, what swung me over to actually getting me finally unconditionally accepted after my IB results in July, and my scholarship not getting affected despite my drop in grades. So I would really say that it really carries quite a big weight when it comes to the application to IE. You really need to market yourself or sell yourself as much as you can to them, and also present yourself as someone that could that the university could benefit from in some sort of way, and also that you can benefit from them, from all of the career related events that they host, such as Bocconi. Every big investment bank or technological company very commonly comes to the amphitheater in the tower, and everyone, and it's always packed, and competition is very high, and you really need to make make yourself stand out from the crowd in order to make the most use of everything that you are doing in your degree.
All right, thank you so much, everyone, so far. So, moving on to the next set of questions on academics, could you describe the typical structure of your lectures or classes? And can you explain like what the level of study has been like? Is it more independent learning, or is it like a lot more group projects and collaborative learning? Could you tell us more about that? Yeah, we can start with Marco.
Yeah, great. If you like project-based work, do not go to Bocconi. Do not go to Bocconi. I just want to emphasize that. Most exams are extremely theoretical and exams based, as I've said like 10 times, I think. So like there's always a typical structure. So once you have a course, the duration is always a semester, and you either have the option to take two what they call partial exams. So each exam accounts for 50% of the grade, or one final general exam, where for every class you have 100% of your grade determined by an hour and a half exam. So if you're not accustomed to that, or if you don't want to go through that, I guess I would lean like towards somewhere else. But sometimes, with courses like management or corporate finance, there is an element of class participation or project-based work involved that accounts for a minority portion of your grade. So there's that. But the majority of these courses, the exam structure is always going to be very traditional exams, multiple choice questions and open-ended questions. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So the capacity for the potential for project-based work is very low. But I have to say that despite that, people I've met here so far, just myself included, we tend to just suck it up and go through with it either way, just because the benefits of going to Bocconi in terms of the brand name benefit us highly in the careers that we want to pursue. So I would say the exam structure is an unfortunate thing that we have to contend with. If you did like say the IB, you're not going to be happy with the type of stuff that you have to do. Like for example, I haven't done a writing assignment in 3 years, maybe 2 years. The next writing assignment I have to do is my bachelor's thesis. So that tells you a lot of things. You're just going to have to cram with textbooks and lectures. Yeah, that's pretty much it. But again, the benefits are there. So that's my take.
Okay, so at IE, you have a very different approach to Bocconi. You have for most classes, you will have a project, and I think that the grading is somewhat between 20 and 30% of your grade. And then they definitely have between 5 to 15% of it being with participation. And participation in the terms of going to the board and solving a math problem, not just attending. So it is active participation and participation with with high quality. So they definitely do look at that. And then maybe from 60 to 70% is you'll have a midterm and then you'll have a final exam. So, as the same in Bocconi, each class is a semester, and you have like 30 sessions for each class. So, you'll have a midterm on the 15th session and the final on the 30th. And a lot of them are multiple choice. Um, some of them now, at least for data analytics, they are on paper. So, math is all on paper. Coding, we even coded on paper. So, um, they are quite traditional in that sense, but they do put a lot of emphasis on the group projects. And the group projects are very interesting and they're very applicable. So, for example, for my mathematics course, there was a very theoretical part, the part of where we had to prove on exams by solving problems. But the group project was about solving a supply chain management problem with the mathematics that we used and coding. So there's a lot of a mix of application across classes, I would say as well. As you move along the years, you'll find if you do data analytics or computer science, you'll see that in most of your courses you're going to be programming, and it really gives you an insight onto onto what you would do in the real world, maybe in a lower scale. But yeah, that's it.
So what I would like to add about IE, if you are coming from IB, I think you'll be very happy here. In terms of familiarity in how the courses are structured, they're all percentage based. So every single thing weighs a certain percentage, and participation is always there despite the subject. It's always at least 10%, even though if it's something like a very math heavy subject, there will still be some sort of participation. You have the midterm and the final, but also they have a very specific rule when it comes to grading and on finals because of that percentiles of certain percentages that are for individual assignments. You always need to get a 35% out of 100 on the final exam in order to pass the course. So you can't just maybe do well in all the assignments before the final and do very poorly on the final. You'll fail the subject if you get below 3.5. So that's something to keep in mind at IE. But so far, I would say that my workload has been lower than in high school, and I worked quite a lot since I did the IB for 4 years, the MYP and the DP. And so far, it has been quite a lot lower, and dare I say it, easier. I don't know how the second semester is going to look like because I don't have experience yet, unfortunately. But I would say that you'll be very familiar here if you're coming from the IB, and something that emphasizes on practical approaches. And I think that your grades are also going to reflect it, even though I was kind of honestly insecure because of my lower IB score. The current GPA I have does not reflect that, honestly. And I have a much higher GPA from these first exams than I expected. So yeah, that's something to keep in mind about IE.
Okay, so far, what has your experience with your professors been like? And are they like more approachable, or are they quite traditional? Could you like briefly explain about that?
Yeah, I'm happy to. I would say for a lot of the mandatory courses that you have to take that are not finance related, uh, particularly the mathematics-based ones, they tend to be a bit more traditional, a bit more top-down, as I previously mentioned. And with regard to grading, I would say a bit more dictatorial in the sense that there's no two-way dialogue. But in the sense, when I talk about courses like microeconomics, macroeconomics, or anything related to finance, I would say that they generally tend to be more international. They went to top schools like Stanford, Harvard, the LSE, and come back to teach at Bocconi. And they are a bit more, I would say, open-minded and more open dialogue. They encourage participation, and they also offer a lot of research assistantships to the students. That's like in your first 1.5 years. In your second half of the bachelor's degree, I would say that the professors that tend to teach the electives, they also hold, like a lot of them will hold like board seats in large companies in Italy, say like UniCredit, the bank, right? And they also have a lot of positions in addition to their teaching at Bocconi and research. So they're from, I would say, non-traditional academic backgrounds, and they have a lot more hands-on experience, which is quite interesting. But yeah, I would say that the caliber in general of the professors is extremely high for the non-mandatory courses, and you can learn a lot from them. You can get them as your thesis advisor, learn even more from them, and that yeah, especially the ones with like experience outside of teaching, they're definitely the most interesting. And we also, in addition to the professors, a lot of our classes, especially related to finance, we have people come in. Like, for example, for my corporate valuation class, we had Knight Frank, a very famous real estate firm, come in and teach us real estate valuation. So it's very hands-on in that sense. I tend to emphasize that the first half of the bachelor's is not that hands-on, not that practical. Second half of the bachelor's, I would say it's a lot more hands-on and a lot more practical. But yeah, that's my take.
Okay, so as I mentioned before, the teachers are very qualified, and similarly to Bocconi, most of them are not only professors, they have their own work outside, so they come in to teach with a lot of experience. As in anything, it really depends on the specific teacher that I'm talking about. But in general, I would say that they're very approachable. Um, you can talk to them. They are very interested in helping you succeed most of the time. Um, it's in many times it's a two-way. So with group projects, you can work with them. Often they're in the university and a lot of them really enjoy sitting and talking to you. So it's very important to build good relationships with the teachers because at the end of the days, those are the people that could be hiring you in the future. So they are very approachable. Again, it depends. All the professors I've had for now have been very good and I've been able to learn very well from them. But again, it really depends. So that was my experience.
Uh, I would say that professors here are also very open, and they are also very willing to help with even when you don't even ask them for it. So, for example, I had my introductory classes this week, and we were introducing ourselves and our interests, and you know how it goes. And whenever a specific person said, "Oh, I'm interested in statistics, I'm interested in IT, I'm interested in healthcare," one of our professors said that, after even during or after the course, you can, text me by email, and I would say, "Oh, I have this person to mentor you for potential internship or potential employment or something like that." Uh, Professors are, as you can see, very approachable and very friendly, I would say. And I think something that was kind of a culture shock for me in Spain, uh, uh, the the relationships between professors and students is a lot more professional and a lot more close. So I'll just give a stupid example. Honestly, most of the Spanish people call the professors by their first name and not just by professor or teacher or whatever. And the professor don't mind that. So that was a bit of a culture shock for me. But I guess that also tells you about how everyone is relaxed and kind of happy to help one another and really not obsessed over the whole professor student kind of role and being super professional all the time. It's a lot more laid back and also a lot more practical, as I mentioned. I think quite a bit.
All right. So my next question is, how does your university support students in terms of internships and job placements after graduation? And sorry, are there any opportunities available for networking and collaboration with peers or industry professionals?
Yeah, I would say that, I mean, because we don't necessarily have cutting edge teaching methods, we tend to pride ourselves on our employment placement. If you look at the master's programs, they always talk about the employability of Bocconi students. And I would say that, as critical as I am of the curricula, as critical as I am of the teaching methods, I have to say that our one extremely strong competitive advantage is employability. Like I said, there's something called investment banking days where if you want to go be an investment banker, which, well, quite honestly, a lot of Bocconi students, that's all they want to do with their lives, from what I've seen, myself included. But that's quite nice. But in addition to that, there's also something called in-company training. So Bocconi has a lot of strategic partnerships with top firms in their fields, investment firms, consulting firms, and they have it in various countries. Like we have in-company trainings uh, in London, in France, and what that entails is for a few days you get to go with a cohort of Bocconi students if you get selected, and you get to visit all these offices and you get hands-on training with people that work at these firms, and that tends to prepare you quite significantly when you do interviews and when you're on the job later down the line. And we also have like a lot of other universities, we also have our own proprietary platform for job postings. So it's called Bocconi JobGate, And on this platform, you'll have access to a lot of opportunities, especially in Italy and continental Europe, that are not publicly posted on, say, LinkedIn or another platform. Some firms, like for example, Centerview Partners, and some other very competitive continental European firms, they exclusively post on Bocconi Jobs and the platforms of a few other schools. So a lot of opportunities will be available to you that are not available to the general public, and that is particularly strong if you're a strong factor in getting employed if you're an Italian applicant, because a lot of firms based in Italy tend to view Bocconi as, you know, the premier sort of university for getting their employees. If you look at a lot of firms in Milan, for example, that are towards a particular niche, again, finance and consulting, a large part of their employee base is just Bocconi students. I would say it's it's akin to how if you look at a firm like that in Spain or Madrid, it would be full of IE students, right? So it's sort of, in the geography that they operate in, I would say Bocconi is good in certain verticals.
So I'm only in my second year, and since I'm doing a dual degree, I have 5 years of university. And the point where we have our exchange or internship that IE truly does help us with is in fourth year. So I haven't really explored the channels that IE does offer in terms of their connections. But what I've heard from friends that are in older years or things that I've researched a little bit, they do help put you in contact similarly to Bocconi. A lot of job postings are done through IE. So you definitely do have access to specific internship opportunities that other people would not have. Um, as I said before, teachers often do provide and ask different students to be part of their companies, or they will provide recommendations because there is a lot of potential, and that's why I said before it's very important to foster good relationship with your professors. So I don't know exactly the platforms that IE does do to help you get an internship. I know that there's job postings, but I haven't really partaken in that. But I do know that teachers often are offering internships, and they do help you put in contact with companies. So yeah.
I would honestly say, from my own point of view, that I think IE is quite a bit more employable than Bocconi, not just from the rankings, but just from my personal estimation. From what I can see, I have a sister who finished Bocconi as well, and she was not entirely satisfied, but at that time, with the whole experience at Bocconi, and from in regards to the teaching methods and also the networking. For some sort of reason, I'm not entirely sure. But from so far what I've seen at IE, it's a lot more focused, and I think a lot of money goes into finding networking opportunities and finding someone to to basically find you work and essentially help you out in finding out what do you want to do for the rest of your life, and are you going to be happy doing it, and also to make you stand out from the crowd. The thing is, even though IE is, I would say, a bit better when it comes to networking, people know that, and the competition is very, very high. I honestly don't know what it's like at Bocconi, but acceptance rates in firms in Madrid, especially those which are more famous, like KPMG, PwC, etc., are very, very difficult. And if you are not really some sort of niche student with some sort of very big talent or something, you will most probably not get that internship or job. Even high grades will not help you. So that's the only sort of caveat of the whole atmosphere at IE. But yeah, if you really do work on yourself and on your professional career, I would say that you could maybe fulfill your wishes about your professional journey, wherever that may be, very easily with IE.
All right, so moving on to the last few questions. How would you describe campus life at IE or Bocconi, including extracurricular activities and what the accommodation looks like?
Yeah, sure. So Bocconi has several dorms that are scattered around Milan. We're around a 20-minute walk from like the very center of Milan. So the location is quite nice. Dorm availability is not the best. A lot of my friends, myself included, we are situated off campus. I mean, like we're close to campus because Milan is a pretty close city, a pretty small city. But a lot of people I know, they do not live in dorms just because it's so hard to get access to a dorm. Tends to happen with an urban campus. And the campus life, I would say, is there's a very strong focus on clubs, a lot of career-oriented clubs. The majority of the clubs are actually career-oriented. A lot of, I mean, as with any other university, right? There's a lot of clubs focused on very niche hobbies as well, and also pretty popular hobbies. So there's that. But I would say the club culture is just like any other university. With regard to campus life, look, I mean, it's a business school in continental Europe. It's not like there's no frats. There's the social aspect of university life is not the emphasis of the experience. The emphasis of experience, I would say, is from what I've seen, is people trying to get into a good master's program or getting a good job, or some American that stumbles onto Bocconi University because they decided that they want to travel around Europe, right? um that's what the experience is. The social life aspect is it's not that big, also because um I know a lot of people tend to say this about their universities, but I would say it's particularly true at Bocconi. The coursework is just so much that you have to focus, especially for the first year and a half or the first 2 years. The coursework is so much that you don't really have much time to travel, um, and much time to do anything else but study. Like when it's near the exam period, even if it's like weeks out from the exam period, like the library and every other seat in like every other building on the campus will be absolutely full. So you literally cannot find a seat to study. Like the library opens at like, I think 9, and from 8:15, 8:30, there will be a damn line with like 50, 60 people in front of the university. I mean, in front of the library, just like queuing to get a seat to study. So studying is huge here. And that doesn't come from like it's an idiosyncrasy about Italy, because if you're Italian, which around like the majority of people at Bocconi are, not in my course, but like in the campus in general, uh, like if you want to get a job here, they solely look at your GPA. It's not, it's quite straightforward. If you don't have what the equivalent of, if you don't have what is the equivalent of first class honors in the UK, it's pretty hard for you to get a, I would say, like prestigious or competitive job in Italy. So the focus is very much on academics, especially with the Italian students and with people that want to work in Italy. So yeah, the social aspect, I don't know. Like maybe there's some socials, like you go out and drink with your friends, like there's events like that organized by clubs. But beyond that, you don't really feel like you're in a campus. You feel like you're in a transitory period before your career. That's what I would say.
So in terms of housing at IE is it's just a building, so it doesn't really have a campus per se. It does have many facilities inside the building, but it's not similar to an American campus. It's located in an area far from the center, around like 40, 50 minutes by metro, which is perfectly okay. It doesn't have its own like student dorms, but there are a lot of student residences, and a lot of people opt for going to a student residence in their first year because you're able to make friends much easier. Finding roommates is difficult, housing is expensive. But I would say that in the second year, people tend to divert towards finding an apartment with people that they know. It is also cheaper if you split it among a few people. So generally, the first year, people tend to go to student residences. I would say different to Bocconi. Um, Everyone does have uh, I think they have maybe more of a social life. Here in Madrid, it is a lot about clubbing. There's a lot of going out, but it really does depend on the person. Everyone that I talk to about IE, I always say that you can make whatever you want of your IE experience. In my experience so far, I would say that passing is not extremely difficult, but getting really good grades is very hard. So you really do have to work hard to be on top. So you can, it's really a personal choice, right? It's university, we're all grown-ups. So everyone can make their own decisions. I would say that similar to Bocconi, close to exam period, you can't even go to the tower because it's just so many people. But it's really a personal experience and a choice of what you want to make of your life. If you want to be successful, you have to focus really hard. You can't go out that much. You have to prioritize. And I think that everyone makes their own choices. I know there's a large percentage of people that focus on their social life, and a large percentage that also focuses on their grades. So it really depends from person to person and what you want to make of your university experience because it's really personal. So
I would say that the experience at IE, the campus experience, really differs on what campus you choose because there are two campuses that undergraduate students can choose. One is in Segovia, which is a small town outside of Madrid, and the other is the Tower, which is in Madrid proper. Usually, Segovia students are, from what I've heard from the professors and other students, a lot more study oriented. So to say, because Segovia is a small city, there's literally one club and everyone sort of knows each other there. And also in Segovia, housing is very difficult to find and also very expensive. And kind of the people there neglect the IE students being there because everything's so expensive because of them. I personally didn't choose Segovia for including those reasons. Madrid is a lot I think nicer to live in. The metro is really cheap if you are a student, and the metro is really good on getting basically in any part of the city you want to get to, so €8 per month. Also, I would say that if you're concerned about housing prices, I would say it's about on par with Milan. In terms of prices, like you won't find anything that if you want to live alone, I'm not sure that you can find anything below €1,000 by my own personal approximation. And student accommodation is also, I think, more expensive than having an apartment. Unfortunately, I honestly think that I made a mistake by choosing a student residence for my first year because I'm seeing like offers for apartments that are a lot cheaper and a lot bigger in the same district that I'm currently in. So yeah, I would probably start looking early and not like me looking in July, so 2 months before I arrive for housing, and basically try to get to know the city better and maybe come to Madrid one time before you live here for 4 or 5 years, depending on your degree. And when it comes to the social life, I would say it's a lot. I mean, from what I've heard, it's a lot better than Bocconi because there's a lot of emphasis on the social life and also on the professional life. And basically, regardless of what your interests are, you'll find a club or some kind of fraternity that matches your interest. Like despite how, no matter how something niche it is, you'll always find to do something that you like and with other people that share the same interests.
All right, so we're almost at the end of our time, but I have just one more question to all of our panelists. With all the knowledge that you have now, what is one piece of advice you would give your younger self?
I would say that just, for people that want to go into Bocconi, there is an archetype across campus that you'll realize. A lot of people like they want very similar things when they first come, just because you're pushed towards pursuing a certain type of career path. And I would say that I would go back, and I was sort of in that group of people who thought that way. And I would say try to figure out what you really want, because going to Bocconi is for a very particular type of person. And if you are not that type of person, it opens doors to pivot to other sort of careers or other sorts of areas of academia, but I don't think you'd be as happy. I would say that the type of person that would be happy at Bocconi is the same type of person that would be happy at an HEC or an LSE or a Wharton. If you want to decide, if you want to explore what you want to do while you're here, I don't think that's really going to work because you have so many mandatory courses that are all centered around a particular subject. It's the subject that you end up applying to. And there's not that much room for exploring your academic interests. And, I would say even intellectual development beyond your area of study is quite difficult because, I know a lot of people that used to read, that like reading, just in general, but they stopped doing it after they became to Bocconi. Actually, I don't know a single person that usually reads that kept reading after they came to Bocconi, just because they're overwhelmed by the textual content that they have to consume on a day-to-day basis, that their brain is fried. They can't read like a novel or anything anymore, right? So for intellectual development, like to be a cultivated human being, I would say, taking a super intense course is not necessarily conducive to that, as with any other university. But in Bocconi particularly, just try to evaluate why you want to go there, if it's going to be a value add to you. If you fall into that archetype, it will be a massive value add to you, more so than most universities. But if you're not that archetype and you just want to figure out what you're going to do, I would say take something that's not too subject specific, like management, right? Because then you could take a master's that's a bit more specialized. You take more general courses. But yeah, that's my advice I would give my former self and anybody looking to apply to this university.
I would completely agree with Marco. I would say that I guess it really depends again on your course. But if you enter something technical, I would definitely have it clear if you really like it, if that's something you want to pursue in your life. Because at the end of the day, it's your everything. I spend all my day studying. And if you don't like it, you're not going to be happy and you're not going to go far with it. So my advice is really figure out what you like, what you want to do if you visualize yourself doing that every single day, because IE is a really great place to succeed. But if you don't like it, you're not going to take the opportunities that it has to offer, and it's not going to be a good experience.
The advice that I would give to my former self is to I don't know, maybe not stress over so much over my grades in high school, because they were in the end not the best due to extenuating circumstances that I could not control. And it wasn't the end of the world. I'm still here. I still got accepted and still got my scholarship. So essentially embrace what you have and also take advantage of everything that you get here. I would say that I delivers so many things that I literally can't mention them all. And that is basically because the university has a lot of funds, so to say, to fund everything, to fund you and to fund others and to fund themselves, and in order to make them an attractable choice for employers and for students alike. And in that sense, I think that it's completely worth it in a way. With regards to everything IE has to offer, it's an excellent school. It will teach you a lot differently than Bocconi from what I can hear. But again, that also depends on what type of person you are. Maybe you prefer it traditionally studying, maybe you prefer taking a more practical approach like it is here. That ultimately depends on you, and basically make that choice inside your head and try to see where you find yourself more, and where you think you'll be happy for the next 3 or 4 or 5 years of your life.
We are at the end of our time today, but thank you so much to our panelists for spending the time with us today. So it was a wonderful insight into IE and Bocconi, what the key highlights are, as well as some insight into the life of a university student. So thank you so much for being so open and honest. Thank you also to the viewers. I'm sure you can all agree that our amazing panelists have done a fantastic job and provided some crucial information to guide decision-making around your next steps. Once again, if you need any help with university and career guidance, do check out our website and Instagram, and you can contact all of the panelists via LinkedIn to get help with any questions you may have. So thank you so much once again, and have a great rest of your day.